Welcome,
Hey,
Andy, to Metallarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about Rivers of Nihil, this new album, as the name of the band. So, and more things
yeah,
related to the metal world in general. So, we are starting by asking, how are you doing today? How is the band over the last couple 4 years? Because your previous album, The Work, was released in 2021.
yeah. First of all, I'm good today. Yeah, it's a nice day in Arizona.
Mhm.
Uh, the past 4 years, so I joined Rivers 3 years ago. Yeah, 3 years ago on May 6th, I played my first show with them. So I've been in Rivers for 3 years and 2 days now.
Mhm.
Um, the past 3 years, we've been on the road a lot. We've been through a couple lineup changes as well, all for the better.
Mhm.
Um, and we've written an album in between all that, and it's crazy because it went, first of all, it went by very fast, but also when I take stock of everything we've done in that time, it's like it's a lot. So it's been a good time.
Okay, okay. Now talking about the composition of this new one, when do you decide songs for this new album? When decide to start all the process of the composition from these rivers of Nihil? Also, you mentioned me that you entered in 2023 of the band. Since there, you start continue playing gigs, a lot of tours. So for this, when you decide to, when you decide to, to start the composition for this new album.
So I think I joined in 2022,
Mm.
and
Okay,
20 so I joined in May of 2022, and I think we started writing in September of 2022.
okay.
Uh, and that started, we were on tour with the Contortionist, and we were in Nashville, I remember. In the backstage of the venue, I had the riff to Suborbital Blues. And I'd had that riff for a while. And I showed it to Brody, and he made a recording of it on his phone. And when we got home from that tour, we started brainstorming ideas for that song. And pretty quickly, we had Suborbital Blues. Hellbirds was already written, but that's not on the album. We had Water and Time, and we had Criminals. And we went in and recorded those. We re-recorded everything eventually, but those were the first four songs that we did together. Uh, and we released three of them as singles, two of which are on the album now, Criminals and Suborbital Blues.
Hmm. Okay, okay. As you told me, you joined the band in 2022 or 2023. Let's put a number, 2022.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yeah, and for this, and this is your first album with the band, Rivers of the
yeah,
Nihil. And curious thing
yeah.
that has the a monument name of the band. That's a curious thing. So how do you gather, or how do you establish all connection with all musicians at the time when you're creating this new album? Because all the time the new musician brings new ideas, bring different points of view. It's not like the old albums. And I denoted this because I'm listening all morning these new Rivers or Nihil, and
Right.
you try to get back that information from the Ebert for the first albums like Monarchy of the Consumption Seeds of the Light. I
Yeah.
denote this light. It's not like the previous one that works more progressive metal than death metal. Now this album is progressive death metal. So how do you involve all this process?
Yeah, so for me, I have been a fan of the band
Mhm.
since they started. Um, so it was always important for me to respect
Mhm.
where they came from, and the legacy of that music because it meant a lot to a lot of people, including myself. Um, that being said, when I did join the band, I was encouraged to contribute musically right away. That was something we understood was going to happen. But the way that I think that works out is I'm very mindful, and it's just the way that it is. But I'm very mindful of sending ideas through Brody because Brody is very much the sound of the band. So when I have an idea, I run it through him and his filter, and then it becomes a Rivers of Nile song because he has uh, very specific ways of going about composing music. Um, so for me, it's in order to respect, you know, the legacy of the music and where the band's been. It's fairly easy because the solution is to just write with Brody, you know.
Oh. Okay. Okay. So now and so, well, as you said, Brody is the sound of the band. But as I said, also they bring a musician, a new musician brings new sound, and you are the fan. So how do you gather all your so let's see. As you started as a fan of the band, now you
Uh,
are playing inside of the band. So
yeah.
how can you see the comparisons as the outsider and now as an insider of the band?
Yeah, so it's interesting, you know, from that perspective because I can look back on like I remember the first time I heard the work and I have a specific moment, and it was when I first heard the chorus of the void from which no sound escapes. I had the album maybe a year before it came out, and I remember thinking like, this is incredible. Like it doesn't get better than this, you know. I remember it made me tear up actually, and you know, getting to play these things live, you get a very much different perspective because I no longer get to experience things like that as a listener so much. Now I have to execute these parts and play the song, and it's not if I do my job properly and I get out of my own head on stage, then I can hear it and go, wow, this is awesome. But generally, I'm just thinking about, I gotta nail this next part. So it's very different. I don't get to listen as much for enjoyment. Well, I don't listen to Rivers of Nile for enjoyment anymore. But that's a good trade-off because now I get to be in the band.
Mhm. Okay, okay. So now, for me, all the time is very curious when a band calls progressive, technical death metal, and more this kind of stuff. Because just when I hear for the first time Rivers of Nihil, I remember very well the Constitutional Seat of Light, great album at that moment. Nobody, nobody paid attention at that moment because it's more progressive death metal, progressive technical death metal a lot
Yeah,
at that time. But then the band continued evolving in new sounds and new things. And you said the works for me is not more anymore to a progressive death metal band. It's more like a progressive metal band with guttural stuff. That's the only thing. But then when I hear complete rivers of this new album, you are returning to your old times, to your first two albums, because I love Monarchy, great, one of the best from you. Monarchy is a great album from Rivers of Nihil. And for this,
sure.
so how it was the process of returning to the old sounds, and did you still consider like these elements progressive technical death metal with a death metal band? Because many things change in the world now. A lot of things considered like progressive extreme metal, progressive death metal. I don't know. You can continue label the band with a lot of the stuff. So how do you see this concept of the labels in a band, and also the style now? Is good, is bad for you that the people consider that you are progressive death metal band?
That kind of stuff, I personally, I'm just speaking for myself.
Mhm.
I don't think too much about. It's a way for people to identify your band, which is helpful. But I mean, that's what a band name is too. It's just a way to help people say, "Hey, I like this thing," and that's fine. I think, and I've heard Brody talk about in interviews how for this album he really went back and took stock of the things that they'd done in the past that he liked, the things they'd done in the past that he didn't like, and that informed some of his musical uh, decisions on this album. But for me, I don't, like I said earlier, I do think it's important to run things past Brody because that's the filter for the sound of the band. But I've never personally thought about how will this be labeled, what will other people think of this. That's not for me a motivator. Those aren't motivators at all. To answer your question.
Mhm. Okay. Okay. Well, this new album will release in just in the coming weeks or during this whole month. And now there are comments. Obviously, the people are speaking about the singles, and
Right.
some magazines are releasing reviews for the album.
Yeah.
Someone. So in this case, how do you take these reviews? Do you have time to read all the comments? Do you have the time to read the reviews? And how do you take a bad review, especially for you? How do you take when people say album is not like expected, for example?
Uh-huh. Yeah. I try not to read the comments. That's general good practice. I think if you want to preserve your sanity and happiness. That's being said, I do read comments from time to time, and I always regret it. But that being said, there's a lot of nice comments too. So, they're there as well. As far as reviews go, reviews are kind of an interesting thing to me. It's music is so subjective that like I guess reviews are important in a way, I guess, to help people identify, might I like this before I check it out or whatever, or will I not? But at the end of the day, it's someone's opinion. So it's like, and that goes the other way around too. It's like if somebody really loves your album, that's cool, but it's still just an opinion because like the music, like it is what it is. And if people like it, cool. If they don't like it, that's all right too. And you can't really control that. I think personally, I'm a little bit withdrawn from the idea of someone listening to something once or twice that someone else worked on for years and judging it. And I try to be that way with music myself, in that I will say, instead of, oh, this sucks or this is great, I'll say that I like this or this isn't for me. So I don't put too much stock in it personally, if that makes sense.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. Now you usually this album comes with with a lot of promotion. So what kind of plans do you have for this album? Perhaps you'll embark in more tours. I saw that you will embark in more tours there. Perhaps you come for the first time in Latin America, a full tour. Who knows? I saw that. Oh, what kind of plans do you have? Release more videos, full tours in Latin America, Asia, or perhaps you're already working on a new album. Who knows?
So this year we have a lot of touring. We're about to embark on a full U.S. and Canada tour, and then in August we'll go back to Europe for all the festivals and stuff, and then in the fall and winter I'm sure we'll do another North American tour. In between, yeah, there. I mean, we would definitely love to come to Latin America. We never have. We've gone to Mexico, but that's just Mexico City, Monterrey, and Guadalajara. So at some point we would love to come down there for sure. We'd love to go all over the place, Japan, stuff like that. But it's just a matter of, does it shake out? And we have a very busy touring schedule this year, so I think that'll take up most of our energy. Um, yeah, just playing as many places as we can. That's the plan right now.
Mm. Okay, okay, amazing. And also with this kind of topic, well, let's talk about another kind of things because Rivers of Nihil. Well, let's talk about the concept of the album Rivers of Nihil. Because when a band puts like the name of the band in one album, it means something. For mostly all bands, Iron Maiden is the first album from them. Other
Right.
bands put like this has a special meaning because it's their third album or it was the last album with the drummer, with the original member. Who knows? Who
Right.
knows? A lot of things. And why you do decide to put Rivers of Nihil as the name of the album, like the band?
I think that was intended bef- for a while because of the first four albums being the seasons theme.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that it was kind of known or understood that when they were done, that the band would kind of do a self-titled album and maybe start to figure out slash reinvent its sound in a way. And I think that that coincided with a lot of shifts in the personnel in the band, and then that we kind of solidified what the core of the band is now, and that in addition to knowing that this would be probably the self-titled album, uh, it cemented the fact that we should do this now, if that makes sense. Like we're definitely the strongest that we've been musically and interpersonally, and yeah, it was just time to do that.
Mm, okay, okay. Now talking a little far away from the Rivers of Nihil in general, let's talk about other kind of things. Now there is 1,000 records saying that they play progressive death metal, technical death metal. I don't know. A lot of labels appears in now in the extreme music, and with these labels appears that the old musicians plays now so perfect. The sound of the music is amazing. There's no bad records now. All record sounds, all record sounds great. All record sounds amazing. Great musician, technical, extreme, progressive musician. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff. Just in this case, just depends most of the sensation of the song. If the song brings something, that is a good thing. That is a good thing. But talking about the sound, it's not anymore like it was 80s or 90s when you find three albums and two albums sounds good and one album sounds bad at that moment. Now there's very different. So now what kind of opinion do you have about this one? That now, especially the extreme music has a lot of great records, a lot of great musicians, but not bad records. There's about talking. We are talking about the standardization of the sound in general.
Um, yeah, I mean, I guess I never really thought of it that way, but the production has come a long way, and you can actually make a really good sounding album in your house if you know what you're doing, you know. And I guess in a way that's a good thing, you know. But like it's as far as like the extreme music thing, um, there, in my opinion, there still are like there's still good and bad records for sure. And I think what you were referencing is the sound, right? Is that they
Right,
all sound
right,
pretty good.
right.
Yeah, that's true. Um, I think there's a lot of mimicry going on with stuff like that. I think that you know, maybe in the 80s you had two albums that sounded good, but they both sounded different, and then the one album sounded maybe bad and or a little not as good, and but they all sounded different. And I think um, you know, a lot of especially with technical music, it can get to a point where it's just very very samey, very redundant. But and I'm not knocking all technical music. I don't consider myself much of a technical guitar player, and but I respect people that are, and I've played with a lot of people that are. Um, but I don't know. I guess I never really thought of that. I never really thought of the fact that, you know, production there aren't bad sounding albums anymore. But I guess that is kind of the case. Even I mean, but I guess that's relative too because, you know, I know a lot of people that listen to a lot of music that was, you know, older music that was analog based
Mm.
recording and they prefer that. My father is a good example of that. You know, people prefer the warmth and stuff of analog music. So I guess to them, maybe we don't have good sounding albums right now. I don't know, you know?
Okay, yeah, that is true. Well, there is different here. There is a lot of difference about that. Yes. Well,
Yeah.
I remember I was in the 80s or the 90s. I remember that when I hear like four or five albums, just three sounds amazing, two not sounds amazing.
Right.
And most of the people think that these are jewels sometimes. For me, not. The truth is true. Some records are jewels and old records no. Other records are not jewels. So that's how is the world works. And all this kind of situation that you can see the extreme musicians, that good comments, or well, the extreme musician, technical musicians
Sure.
you can see now. And also we're talking about more from the progressive style. I remember when appears in the beginning like bands from Cynic or Opeth considered at that moment like the first wave of the progressive death metal bands, including Nocturnus, obviously about this one. But just for me, just only at that moment when I hear these three bands, for me, just Nocturnus was the correct way to label a progressive death metal band because they're Mike Browning is more like progressive death metal. Opeth and Cynic are more progressive death metal bands from especially for me because I was there hearing the first albums from them. But
Right.
now there's the concept of progressive death metal evolved with a good things like Rivers of Nihil. Disney albums completely progressive death metal. So now, how do you think about these old first bands that considered a progressive death metal, and now we have a better way to label a bands that lean down to that style?
Yeah, I mean, as far as like Opeth and Cynic go, Opeth is one of the, for me, I heard Blackwater Park in I think 2001 when it came out. I think that was the year it came out, and that turned my whole world upside down. I think I listened to that nothing but that album for about a year. Um, I'm a huge Opeth fan. I have been since then. So I guess I would have been 15 or 16 back then. Now I'm 38, and so Opeth is a band that I will say like, and well, I'll stick with Opeth for now. But Opeth is a band that really opened the doors for bands like us because they, in my estimation, they were the best example of a band that proved that you can do so much else within the context of death metal. I really am very grateful for them because without hearing them, I might not have understood that what's possible. Um, and I have to say the same thing for Cynic. Cynic, I got into Focus a few years. I was, I'm a little younger, so I didn't hear Focus when it first came out. But I heard Focus, and then a few years later, Traced in Air came out. And I remember having the same feeling, like that this is possible. Um, I think those two bands specifically are very, and we just got to do a European tour with Cynic, and they were lovely guys. It was great, and it was awesome to have them. Uh, you know, it's legendary what these bands have done, and I have nothing but respect for them, for sure.
Okay, okay, okay. And now talking about other kind of topics, as you can see, the world releasing like 30 or 40 releases per weekend. So now, how how can you see these overwhelming releases per weekend? So because we have more than 30 or 40 releases per week, it's not like anymore from the beginning of 2000s or at
Right.
beginning of 2010s. It's not like anymore. We have more than 50 releases. For some people, thinks that this is bad for the scene, and for the other people, this one is good for the scene. So, what kind of opinion do you have about these so overwhelming releases per weekend?
Um, I don't really know if it's good or bad for the scene. I don't really know what the scene is. I mean, because everything's so huge now. It's especially with the internet. It's hard to, the scene is millions of people. Um, I think that the amount of music that's coming out, I guess ultimately is a good thing, um, because people have many, many options. I guess it just makes it more difficult to navigate and find. I remember being a kid and thinking like, or realizing like I found this band, like Opeth, for example. I found Opeth. I want to go buy Blackwater Park. Or I found Meshuggah. I want to go buy Chaosphere. Or I found Soilwork. I want to go buy Natural Born Chaos or whatever. And very much having like a tunnel vision. I want to go buy this thing. And I would assume, yeah, because I'm a little older, I'm not really out there looking for a ton of new music, specifically heavy music. I kind of like the stuff that I liked when I was younger. Um, I would assume that younger people don't really have that experience anymore. Like, I'm gonna go buy this CD because I heard of this band. I hear what they're, maybe I read an interview with them and I'm thinking, oh, this sounds awesome. So, it's probably a little different. Is it good or bad? I don't know. Probably both.
Okay, 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 okay. Well, we are closer to end this interview, Andy. And one thing that's right now in the music industry is talking about the artificial intelligence. It's now
Mm.
involved just not in the cover art. It's more involved with the plugins stuff. As you can see now, a band plays live, and there is no more people involved of the production when a band plays live because the producer just wants to play directly with the console and not plays with the amps anymore. Now is Many people think that the artificial intelligence is taking jobs for a lot of things, but this
Mm.
situation right now is happening with a lot of engineers in live presentations, because you can see that a lot of tours, a lot of producers doesn't want to play directly with the console. We just need one guy now for the sound. It's not anymore somewhere engineer amps or drums amps or engineer drums engineer. You just need one person, and we all set it up with one person with the plugins directly to the console, or one man doing everything behind the desk when you play a live concert. So what's your opinion about now this new wave to play live presentation without people involved, just the musicians and one people handle everything?
I mean, that's not really been my experience,
Mhm.
so I can't really speak to that. We have a sound guy. But as things grow, you have more and more crew. I don't know. I definitely haven't seen that too much, but I do think that I I think it's important to kind of try to embrace the way things are and not really the way that you wish they still were. I think that's a recipe for being very unhappy and being bothered and troubled all the time. Um, so I don't really think too much about those things. Um, yeah, like I said, I haven't noticed what you were talking about there. That's not to say it isn't the case, but at least in my personal experience, it hasn't been. We have a crew. Um, but as things change and society changes and the world changes, I think I can only control what is directly around me. And if I spend too much time thinking about reminiscing about the way I wish things were or anything like that, like I said, that's a recipe for me being unhappy, and I don't want to be unhappy. So yeah, I don't think too much about that stuff, to be honest, and I don't mean that in any type of disrespectful way.
I understand. I understand. No worry. I understand because I spoke with musicians from the 90s, and they still prefer to work with people with amps and more things related. I understand completely this
Yeah,
kind of position, because that's it's better way to hear just a lot of stuff with these kind of things. Because I recently went to a different concerts, and mostly all bands just playing without amps. Just the amps are for the band, for the main band, or just the amps
right,
are for the for part of the scenario, but it's not working anymore. So that
right.
curious thing happening now in the world. Great. So, well, Andy, we arrived to the sad moment of this interview. I hope you enjoyed this one like me. So, and well, this new record is amazing one. Really, I love it. I listen all the morning, really, really. And perhaps do you want to add something to your Latin American fans that expect someday a full Latin American here soon? Who knows? Or and
Sure.
Metallica followers.
Sure. I mean, thank you for your support. We can't wait to see you and meet you, and I'm sure we will over the next year. I would think it has to happen. So stay tuned, and thank you for listening. And yeah, like I said, can't wait to meet you.